In the previous session under mechanics, we are trying to understand gradient of a field. For that, I am just quoting an example. Let us recollect. So we are taking 2 points, let us say P and Q, separated by a small interval delta R. That means temperature at this point P is T1, temperature at this point is T2. So there is a gradual increment from T1 to T2 in all the three directions of these coordinates. That means X, Y and Z. So when it moves from P to Q, the temperature T1 is changing from T1 to T2. That means T2 will be, there is a small increment in the X direction, in the Y direction, in the Z direction. How do we interpret this? That is, temperature at the point P is taken as T1, temperature at point Q is taken as T2. That means there is a difference in temperature between the points P and Q. That is represented as, because it is a temperature difference, it is represented as T2 minus T1, which is nothing but delta T. There is change in temperature. Now this delta T is a scalar and it does not depend on the choice of coordinates. Which type of coordinates you have selected is immaterial for this. Whether it is a Cartesian coordinate system or rectangular coordinate system or a polar coordinate system. Therefore, we will choose the geometrical representation of coordinate system according to our choice. So therefore, we can choose conveniently the set of axes. Therefore, we can write this as, let us say, temperature T1 originally at P, it is representing all the three coordinates. When it is raised to T2 from T1, there is an increment in X, Y and Z direction. Therefore, the components we can write like this. At T2, X is increased from X to X plus delta X. Y is from Y to Y plus delta Y. Z is from Z plus delta Z. In this delta X, delta Y, delta Z, they are nothing but components of vectors along delta R. So on this we will apply partial differential equation approach. So based on the theorem of partial derivatives, the difference of values of T, that is delta T, between the two neighboring points P and Q, we can apply this on that and see it as something like this. Delta T is equal to dou T by dou X into delta X plus dou T by dou Y into delta Y plus dou T by dou Z into delta Z. This is how when you apply partial derivative, it looks like this. So what it will tell us, this tells us how the temperature T of the metal bar what you have taken, it is changing when all the three coordinates are changing by very small. That is what we mean by saying infinitely small. Therefore, infinitely small can be defined as, termed as infinitesimal. So, very infinitesimal amount of delta X, delta Y, delta Z change you can observe in this equation. We term this equation as equation 1 for further calculation. If you see the left hand side of this equation, that is delta T, this is clearly a scalar. But if you see the right hand side, there is a dot product. Something into something, plus something into something, plus something into something. Like that it is coming. So the right hand side of this equation seems to be a dot product of two vectors. So therefore, we can write it as a dot product. So this equation can be written as a dot product using the Cartesian coordinates as delta T, left hand side, right hand side is equal to I into dou T by dou X plus J into dou T by dou Y plus K into dou T by dou Z dot I dot delta X, J delta Y, K delta Z. This is how the previous equation 1 can be termed as. This is, for example, if you see dou T by dou X into delta X. Dou T by dou X into delta X. Delta X means X direction. So unit vector I will come. Unit vector J will come. Unit vector K will come. Like a dot product, if you represent this, it will come like this. Okay. To simplify this let me call it as equation 2. To simplify this equation, this is X into Y like this. So therefore, this entire term, the first term in this right hand side, that is I into dou T by dou X, J into dou T by dou Y, K into dou T by dou Z. This you can represent as del T. Del operator I am using. So when you are using del operator for this delta T is del T into something, del T dot something. So therefore, for this term, if you put the del operator, and represent it as a del T, then this equation can be noted as del of T into something. Therefore, delta T, don't get confused. This is the temperature difference. This is the gradient we are using. This is the del operator. So, del operator is represented like this. Though it is pronounced as delta, here I am calling this as only del. Here it is delta. Therefore, delta T is equal to del T dot something. So, how do we write this? This is dr only. This is a change in all the three directions of dr or delta r. Therefore, when you substitute this entire equation will become delta T is equal to del of T dot delta R. This is what is the gradient of temperature. This is what is to be called as gradient of temperature. If you observe this carefully, clearly this del T is a vector quantity derived from a scalar field. In this equation on the right hand side, if you see the first term where the del operator is used, this is the gradient of T. This is clearly this telling us that this del T is a vector derived from a scalar field. So therefore, what is equation 2 is helping us to understand? It is the difference in temperature between the two neighboring points. That is delta T. That means it's a dot product. Dot product of the gradient related to temperature. And it is a vector difference between the 2 points. Right? How do we represent this gradient? Because you are using the word gradient. Any gradient of any scalar field is a vector. The moment you say vector, like any other vector, it should have magnitude and direction. Therefore, the equation 2 we got, we can look at like this. Delta T is equal to del T dot delta R. So, this can be represented as, it's a dot product, A dot B. A dot B is nothing but AB cos theta as per scalar product, modulus of A into modulus of V into cosine of the angle. So, like that, the right hand side dot product, I am representing like this, modulus of del T, modulus of delta R and cos theta. Now, what is the theta? Theta is the angle between them. So, let us fix this length. A small distance it has moved. So, if you fix this displacement, length or displacement, whatever you call, let it have arbitrary direction. Means it can be in the x direction or it can be in the y direction or maybe in the z direction. So, therefore, if you fix the length having arbitrary direction, the value of this product, that is del T dot del R, is maximum. When it will be maximum? When theta is 0 is only maximum. When theta is 0, cos 0 is equal to 1, then only it is become. When theta is 90, the whole thing becomes 0. Therefore, value of del T dot delta R is maximum only when del R is along the direction. Theta is equal to 0 means when this is delta R is along the direction of this del T, then only theta will be, that means it is parallel. If it is along only, then only theta will be 0. When theta is 0, cos theta is equal to 1, therefore it will have maximum value. When cos theta is equal to 0, this delta T will become del T delta R. So, when theta equal to 0 means, in this equation, cos theta equal to cos 0 maximum value. That means, this is along the direction of the del operator, that is the gradient. So, therefore, when we move along the same direction as the gradient, then the function t changes maximum. So, therefore, the direction of delta t is along the greatest in the increase of t. That means the direction of delta t is along with the greatest increase of t. When that increases only, it is along. So, this modulus what we have operated always giving us the magnitude that gives the slope along the direction. The modulus value always gives you the slope. This is what you have to understand as far as this temperature example is concerned. Hope you have got an idea about the concept of gradient of a field. So, this discussion helps us to understand the physical significance for the gradient of a scalar field. Therefore, we can conclude from this that the gradient of a scalar field for any gradient at any point can be defined as a vector quantity whose magnitude is maximum rate of change of that at that point and direction is along the normal at that point. This is also called as geometrical interpretation of the gradient of a scalar field. So with this background, when you look at the basic laws of motion as per the idea given by Isaac Newton, so according to modern ideas of how Newton was using his terminology, we can understand that as something equivalent of idea can be used. For example, if you take the second law of Newton, so the change of momentum of a body is proportional to the impulse impressed on the body, and it happens along the straight line on which that impulse is impressed. That's how it can be interpreted. Now if you see the first law, let us see how we interpret. So the statement of second law says the rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the applied force. So you can as well put it as the rate of change of momentum is proportional to the impulse impressed on the body, and it actually takes place along the straight line on which that impulse is impressed. So if you look at the first law, which is inertia, now this can be understood in a better way. It is very simple to understand the first law. What the first law says is every body continues to be in the state of rest or of its uniform motion unless it is compelled by an external unbalanced force to change that state of rest or uniform motion. That is actually the statement of first law as far as Newton is concerned. Now when you try to interpret that, it means without force motion cannot happen. That means if a force is generating a motion, suppose if you apply double the force, then naturally a double force should generate double the motion. A triple force should generate triple motion. So whether that force can be impressed altogether at once or gradually or successively. So the motion is always being directed in the same way with a generating force when the body moved before it is added or subtracted from the former motion. That is, they directly conspire with or directly contrary to each other, obliquely joined. When they are oblique, to produce a new motion compounded from the determination of the both. So interpretation of first law is very interesting. So first law is also termed as law of inertia. We shall see why it is called law of inertia. So if you see the first law, Newton used a term called inertia. What is inertia? Inertia of a body is a property by virtue of which the body opposes the change in the position of rest or uniform motion of the body in the absence of an external force. What is meant by that? Suppose when a body is at rest, if you apply a force, the body opposes to move, or when the body is in motion and the force tries to modify the direction of the motion, again the body opposes to change. So therefore inertia is an inherent property of the body, because of which it always tries to oppose the change in its position or motion. So the inertia of the body is directly proportional to its mass. The heavier the mass, the greater is the inertia. The lesser the mass, the lesser is the inertia. So therefore it is the tendency of the body to maintain its state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line. That is what is to be termed as inertia of the body. So let us understand how do we interpret Newton's first law. For example, you take this. So body is kept here. So when the force is balanced on either side, there is no motion. When there is a change, it is becoming unbalanced. That means what the first law is saying, try to recollect the first law. Every body persists in its state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless it is compelled to change that state by forces impressed on it. In other words, the velocity of the body remains constant unless the body is acted upon by an external force. That means when there is no external force, it cannot move. See, in this case, when the force is balanced, there is no motion, it is at rest. The moment the force is unbalanced, the body started moving. So therefore, when there is no force, that means total force acting on this body, if it is 0, sigma f 0 means total force acting on the body is 0. Then dv by dt is 0. That means there is no acceleration. d by dt of v means v is the velocity. So the velocity remains constant. When velocity remains constant means that its derivative is 0 only. Na? Therefore, when you say sigma F equal to 0, dV by dt is automatically 0. That means force, there is no force means the body is at rest. That we cannot straight away interpret like that. When the external force is 0, the body is moving with uniform velocity. When velocity is uniform, its derivative is 0. Therefore, mathematically what we can interpret is, when the vector sum of all the forces, that is sigma F equal to 0, then we can say dV by dt equal to 0. So therefore, from this we can state that if the resultant force, that is the vector sum of all the forces acting on the object is 0, then the velocity of the object is constant. This is how you can interpret Newton's first law. Try to recollect. Till now, you always thought, you were told in your lower classes that Newton's first law states that every body continues to be in the state of rest or of uniform motion unless it is compelled by an external unbalanced force to change that state of rest or motion. This is what you have studied. Now I am trying to make you understand how to interpret the first law at engineering level like this. Hope you have understood what is sigma F equal to 0. That means whenever the velocity of a body remains constant, only the velocity of body remains constant only when there is no force acting on it. There is no external force acting on it. In other words, the velocity of the body remains constant unless the body is acted upon by an external force. That means when the external force is 0, velocity is uniform. Velocity remains constant. So mathematically derivative of that velocity is 0. So sigma F equal to 0 means dV by dt equal to 0. There is no acceleration. Now this help us to interpret first law of Newton like this. How do you interpret? Carefully listen. If the resultant force, which is nothing but the vector sum of all the forces acting on the object is 0, then the velocity of the object is constant. This is how you can represent the first law of Newton. That means an object is at rest, it will stay rest unless an unbalanced force acts on it. Similarly, if an object is in motion, it will not change its velocity unless an unbalanced force acts on it. That means the body continues to be moving along the same straight line unless some external force acts on it to change its direction of motion. Is that understood? This is how first law can be understood. And Newton, he placed this first law of motion to establish something called frames of reference for which the other laws are applicable. The first law of motion postulates the existence of at least one frame of reference, what is called Newtonian frame or inertial frame of reference, relative to which the motion of a particle not subject to forces is a straight line at a constant speed. That means, I am trying to interpret, if it is in resting, it is in rest state only. If it is in motion, it is in motion state only. That means there is only one frame of reference. Body at rest wants to be in rest. Body in motion continues to be in motion. That is what is basically inertial frame of reference. So therefore, Newton's first law can be often referred to as law of inertia. Therefore, it is therefore necessary for us to obtain a condition for the uniform motion of a particle relative to an inertial frame of reference, because the net force acting on it is 0. This is what I mean. Again I am referring. This is very difficult to understand also. What is this inertial frame of reference? To understand this, when the body is at rest, the body wants to be at rest. When the body is in motion, the body continues to be in motion in a straight line without any application of force. That means the body continues to be in its state. The body is at rest. It doesn't want to change. The body is in motion. It doesn't want to change its motion stage. That means it is in inertial stage. Single frame of reference. Understood? So therefore, that reference of frame Newton is trying to bring us. So Newton's first law, we know that it can often be referred to as law of inertia. That means a condition is needed for the uniform motion of a particle relative to an inertial reference frame, that the total net force acting on it is 0. So now you can restate the first law. So this is the first law you made. Like what? Every body persists in its state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless it is compelled to change that state by forces impressed on it. This is how you can refer it. Now, that means velocity always remains constant. Velocity doesn't change. Now, with the concept of inertial frame of reference, we can state Newton's first law like this. In every material universe, the motion of a particle in a preferential frame of reference phi, let us say phi is a one frame of reference, it is a reference frame. So, in every material universe, the motion of a particle in a preferential reference frame phi, it is determined by the action of forces whose total vanished for all times when and only when the velocity of the particle remains constant in that frame. Here, the phi is nothing but if one frame of reference. I am repeating. Let us suppose phi is nothing but one frame of reference. What Newton's law according to inertial approach can be stated now as in every material universe, the motion of a particle in a preferential reference frame phi is found or is determined by the action of what? Vector sum is determined by the action of forces whose total, that is F1 plus F2 plus etc. sigma F becoming 0. So, whose total vanished for all the time when and only when the velocity of the particle is constant in that frame. That means if the velocity of the particle remains constant in that frame of reference, then the body is obeying that inertial law. That is, in the every material universe, the motion of a particle is determined by the action of force whose total vanishes for all time when and only when the velocity of the particle is constant in that frame. That means the particle is initially at rest or initially uniform motion in that preferential frame phi. It continues to be in that state only unless it is compelled by any external force to change that. This is how you can understand Newton's first law from inertial frame of reference. But one thing that is to be remembered here is Newton's laws are valid only in an inertial reference frame. Any reference frame that is in uniform motion with respect to an inertial frame is also an inertial frame, like Galilean invariance or the principle of Newtonian relativity. These are all inertial frames only. This law is valid only when Newton's laws are applicable only with respect to inertial frame of reference. Now, the next thing we have to understand is why Newton's first law of motion is called the law of inertia. Well, I am sure, my friends, till now you might not have got an answer for this. You were only taught, you have studied at your lower classes that Newton's first law is also called law of inertia. Now at engineering level, at higher levels of education or understanding, you will come to know the answer to this. Why is Newton's first law of motion is called law of inertia? Based on the Newton's first law, in the absence of any net force on a body, the body is either at rest or it moves with a constant speed in a straight line. That means, in other words, in order to change the motion changing means both magnitude and direction or either of them. That is magnitude or direction or magnitude and direction of velocity. The net external force can be required. That is, every body has a tendency to maintain its state of rest or state of uniform velocity. So, according to this, because of that reason, Newton's first law is called law of inertia. I am recapping. Why is Newton's first law of motion is called law of inertia? If you look at Newton's first law, based on the first law of Newton, in the absence of any net force on a body, that is sigma F equal to 0, then the body is either at rest or it moves with a constant velocity or speed in a straight line, which means that in order to change that motion means you can change the magnitude, you can change the direction of velocity, you can change both. Then the net external force can be used. That means it is required. which means that every body has got a tendency to maintain its state. Either that state can be state of rest or state of uniform velocity. So therefore, that is the reason why first law is called law of inertia. But remember, inertia has got three types. It is inertia of rest, inertia of motion, inertia of direction. Now let us understand what is inertia of rest. Inertia of rest, when you look at the resistance of a body is to change its state of rest. It is called inertia of rest. Inertia of rest is nothing but the resistance of a body is to change its state of rest. For example, when you are standing in a bus, the bus suddenly starts. The passenger sitting inside tends to fall backwards because the lower part of the body starts moving while the bus, whereas in the upper part tends to be at rest due to inertia of bus. Suppose you are standing, a passenger is, take an example, a passenger traveling in a bus. When the bus suddenly starts, the passenger sitting inside tends to fall back because the lower part of the body starts moving along with the bus, whereas the upper part tends to be at rest due to inertia of rest. This is how you can understand inertia of rest. Let us understand inertia of motion. Inertia of motion is nothing but the resistance of a body to change its state of motion. Here it is resistance to change its state of rest. Here it is resistance to change of its motion. That means inertia of motion is the resistance of a body to change its state of motion. For example, take the same old bus example. In the bus example, suddenly when the bus stops, the passenger sitting inside tends to fall forward because the lower part of the body comes to rest along with the bus, whereas the upper part tends to remain in the motion because of the inertia of motion. That is the best example to understand inertia of motion. Now let us look at the other one, that is the inertia of direction. Inertia of direction means it is the resistance of a body to change its state of direction. So the resistance of a body to change its state of direction is what is called inertia of direction. For example, if you want to take an example for the inertia of a direction is the protection of ourselves by umbrella. Protection of ourselves by umbrella. The raindrops falling vertically downwards, observe. The raindrops falling vertically downwards, they cannot change their direction of motion and therefore they cannot let us when the umbrella is up. I am repeating. The example of inertia of direction is protection of us by umbrella. The raindrops falling vertically downwards cannot change their direction of motion and therefore cannot let us when the umbrella is up. This is the best example to understand the inertia of direction. Look at some of the examples for the law of inertia. So when you, for example, when pulled quickly, the tablecloth can be removed from the underneath of dishes. The dishes have the tendency to remain still as long as the friction from movement of tablecloth is not too great. Similarly, if the car is abruptly accelerated, drivers and passengers may feel as though their bodies are moving backward. In reality, inertia is making the body want to stay in place as the car moves forward. Similarly, when you jump from a car or a bus that is moving, your body is still moving in the direction of vehicle. When your feet hits the ground act on your feet and they stop moving. So you will fall because the upper part of your body did not stop and you will fall in the direction in which you are moving. Similarly, when you stir the coffee or a tea and stop, the swirling motion continues due to inertia. Similarly, in a sports field, an athlete often runs before taking a long jump, because athlete brings himself in the state of motion and then only he can jump. Suddenly you can't jump, you can't make a long jump from rest. So bringing himself into the state of motion so that athlete, it becomes easier for him to take a long jump. That means you have to run for a distance before taking a long jump. Because till that time body is in rest, suddenly you can't make a long jump. To make your body into that running motion, you have to run and then take a jump. Similarly, the rotating wheels of a vehicle throughout the mud in a tangential direction. Because due to inertia of direction, this is the reason that the mud guards are provided in vehicles over the wheels to stop this mud so that it protects the clothes. So these are some examples to understand laws of inertia. That is the first. We have so far discussed about the first law of Newton. In the next stage, we will try to see how we can understand second law of Newton.